I'm here to talk to you about the Darkening of Mirkwood. This is going to be a recap video, and I am sort of expecting it's going to be kind of long and rambly, as I'm going to attempt to recap this campaign, which has taken up the last 3+ years of my life. There's going to be a lot of names, so just kind of hold on, and hopefully this will be enough for you to get oriented and jump into the campaign where things are at. The good news is, since you're playing a character to whom a lot of this stuff is going to be new, it'll be completely in character for you to ask questions. All right, so we start out in the year 2946 of the Third Age of Middle-earth. So this is about 5 years after Smaug was slain by Bard of Laketown. And Dale has very recently been refounded, actually just about 2 years prior. And the party began when they heard rumors of Balin and Oin, of the Thorin's company, being lost in the long marshes. And Dofer Doin's son, who was played by one of our players, Ben, who's been with us from the beginning, hired a company of adventurers in Laketown, which is sort of, at the time, was kind of this nexus that people were coming to as the Lonely Mountain was being refounded and Dale was being rebuilt. And hired a company of adventurers, went into the Long Marshes and retrieved them. And that was our starting adventure. That's kind of how everyone met. And that took us on to the year 2947. In the year 2947, a bunch of things began happening. There were rumors of Glip, a wretched creature, passing along the eaves of the wood of Mirkwood. And, of course, Glip is, it's a pretty... it's kind of a deep pull. It's a Tolkien reference. If you've read some of Tolkien's Bimble Bay poems, then you'll know who I'm talking about. Ceowina the Generous sent messengers to Woodman Town, to Rosgobel, and to Wooden Hall, asking the clan elders to hear his plea. He wanted to ally his followers living in the East Bight with the Woodmen, who were his distant kin. The elders agreed to hear his request, and a folk moot was arranged for the midsummer of the following year of Rosgobel. After several years of peace, the howl of the Werewolf of Mirkwood is again heard in the forest. The Werewolf of Mirkwood is this monster, the spirit of malice from the ancient world, and basically it's a spirit in wolf form. It takes the form of wolf, but it's not so much a wolf itself. It's something more than that. It attacked a party of dwarves from Erebor as they foolishly stray from the elf path, traveling through Mirkwood. The party delivered a message from Gloin to Radagast, Dofer and company, and along the way, as they were delivering that message to Radagast, they encountered Baron the Runner, who was a messenger of Radagast who had been poisoned by spiders. He was being pursued by, and the party was actually waylaid by, the servants of Tyrant's Hill. So Tyrant's Hill, Amon Balglir, is a fortress in the south of Mirkwood, kind of right south of the narrows of the forest, but north of Dol Guldur. And the lieutenant of Tyrant's Hill, the lord of Tyrant's Hill, is a man named Mogdred. Pay attention to his name because he'll come up again. But the lieutenant of Tyrant's Hill was who they actually ran into, and that was Dagmar, who attempted to seize Baron and his message. But Birdsong of Rosgobel, played by Sophie, one of our long-term players who's been with us since the very beginning, cut off Dagmar's arm, and the party was able to escape. In the year 2948, we have trespassers from Dale entering the woodland realm to cut down trees, including some silver beeches that are especially beloved of the elves. They weren't malicious in doing this. It's just that Dale needs timber. They're growing very quickly. They need timber, and the timber is right there in the woods next to them, which just happens to belong to the elves. And this sort of begins a whole theme, a whole series of problems that the men of Dale run into, and the men of Dale and the elves of the woodland realm run into over control of these natural resources, essentially. Una, a young merchant princess from Dorwinion, left her court in early summer to visit Dale for diplomatic reasons. A detachment of barding warriors was sent by King Bard to meet her caravan along the running river. They reached the merchant convoy just in time to discourage a band of raiders from the east that was following them. And when the princess finally arrives in Dale, everyone is captivated by her beauty, and pretty much everyone sees Bard, how captivated he is by the sight of Una's dancing during the feast held in her honor. He falls madly in love with her. Radagast, in the meantime, sent the party in pursuit of the creature Glip. Glip has stolen the baby from Rosgobel. The party pursue Glip along the way. They encounter and eventually slay the troll Mansbane and defeat the Mirror Maiden. The Mirror Maiden is this spirit of the ancient world who was imprisoned using some kind of Numenorian, a Numenorian statue that had imprisoned her within a cave near the Gladden Fields. And the party managed to slay the Mirror Maiden, or at least defeat her, and returned with the child that Glip had stolen, named Elise. And that's when they also found out that Glip was Gollum. Not that anybody in the party knows Gollum, but the Mirror Maiden, but Gollum had sort of fallen into the service of the Mirror Maiden, I guess you could say. The party returned to Rosgobel in time for the Folkmoot, and there Ceowina the Generous and Amaleoda of the Black Tarn both advocated for their settlements to be reckoned among the woodmen. So there were previously 4 great woodman houses, Woodman Town, Woodland Hall, Rosgobel, and Mountain Hall. So yeah, 4 woodman houses. And essentially, the 4 woodman houses increased to 6 at that Folkmoot. Down in the Black Tarn, which is a lake just inside of Mirkwood, just north of the narrows of the forest, a spear maiden named Amaleoda had founded a settlement. And then over on the east side of the forest, in the East Bight, Ceowina the Generous had founded a settlement. And it's actually pretty important to keep track of the woodman settlements as we go, because they're going to figure pretty prominently in some of the events of the campaign. So they were both by common vote of the woodmen, both those settlements were reckoned among, and the number of the great woodman houses went from 4 to 6. Also that day, Mogdred, the Lord of Tyrants Hill, showed up and revealed himself to be Ingrimar's lost son. Ingrimar is the war leader of the woodmen, and Mogdred, his son was believed lost long ago in a raid by the orcs of Dol Guldur, and but in fact his son wasn't dead. His son was alive, and some say actually in service of Dol Guldur, and some say not. But in any case, Mogdred shows up and wants the men of Tyrants Hill to be reckoned among the woodmen of Mirkwood as well. With a little convincing from Birdsong, the woodmen of Mirkwood decide not to admit the men of Tyrants Hill, and he is rejected. So the men of Tyrants Hill are shunned, which the players think is probably a good thing. And the year wraps up with the Day of the Black Arrow. The Day of the Black Arrow is a huge festival that's held every year in Lake Town, basically during Dragontide, which is sort of the long Yuletide or New Year's festival that Lake Town celebrates. And the Day of the Black Arrow, there's a huge there's an archery tournament called the Black Arrow, and the winner of the tournament gets a golden replica of the Black Arrow, which Bard used to kill Smaug. The winner of the tournament also gets the title of the Black Arrow, which they keep until somebody else wins the tournament. So you can sort of hold that title as defending champion for as long as you're able to hold it. The current champion at the time of the year 2948, which is, it's a pretty new title, but the current defending champion is a man named Vigrid. Vigrid is the chief of the Black Cloaks. The Black Cloaks are King Bard's personal guard. There are 50 of them. They're also called the King's Guard or the King's Bowmen. They're 50 hand-picked archers and warriors. At this point in time, basically the cream of the crop of those who left Lake Town to follow Bard to refound the city of Dale. And they're all extremely proficient warriors and very gifted archers. The party meets and helps Astrid. Astrid is a merchant woman in the town in Lake Town who has some kind of a past romantic history with Bard. It's not entirely clear exactly what the nature of that is, except that they knew each other, and there were feelings, at least on Astrid's part, before Bard went off to refound Dale. Um, Complicating all of this is the fact that as part of the celebration of the Black Arrow, Bard's going to be getting married to Princess Una of Dorwinion. So you've got the wedding. The day of the wedding is coming up, and the winner of the Black Arrow will, among other things, secure an invite to the wedding. Astrid is trying very hard to get an invite to the wedding, and because she believes that there's going to be an attempt on Bard's life made, and she feels like she needs to be there to prevent it. So the PCs help her, and they help her by helping her string her bow. Her bow is a bow that was given to her by her father. It's strongly hinted at to be an enchanted bow, and they help her get a string for the bow. The string was mysteriously cut by the players didn't actually see who. So they help her get a new string for the bow from a dwarven smith, and it's an enchanted string. And so Astrid partakes in this contest along with Birdsong and some of the other members of the party, and Astrid wins. She beats Vigrid out, but unfortunately, that's when the smith comes forward with the news, or maybe Vigrid brings the smith forward with the news that it was revealed that Astrid had been using an enchanted bowstring, an enchanted bow, and so she was disqualified from winning the prize. Desperate, Astrid decides that she's going to come up with some other way of sneaking into the wedding in order to prevent what she thinks is going to be an attempt on Bard's life. The players trying to help her manage to secure, with the help of Glowing, their patron, invites to the wedding. They show up in Dale at Bard's Hall. His palace hasn't been built yet. And they show up at Bard's Hall in time for the wedding, and sure enough, there is an attempt on Bard's life. But Astrid is also trying to sneak in. She gets caught. Vigrid suspects her. Vigrid suspects the players who were helping her, and Dofer, Doine's son, ends up getting shot in the butt with an arrow by Vigrid, for which he was handsomely paid later. But the players do manage to prevent the attempt on Bard's life, and that was kind of the end of the year 2948. It was later revealed that this was the first attempt. This was the first attempt by someone called the Morwen to have King Bard killed, and Astrid and the Morwen are also going to come up. 2948 was a pretty important year as far as kind of setting the direction for the campaign. So that takes us to the year 2949. Spiders attacked a woodman boat traveling down the Dusky River. The river maidens interceded to save the woodmen by guiding them out of the webs, but one of the woodmen reported seeing a gigantic spider lurking in the shadows. Glip lingers on the fringes of the western eave, stealing food from the woodmen. One farmer tried to catch the thief. Glip retaliated by terrifying the farmer's cows, who trampled the woodmen to death. And Ingrimer of Woodman Hall put a bounty on the head of this bloody ghost. Beorn visited northern Mirkwood and met with King Thranduil, and tensions with the Barding villages along the eastern borders of the Woodland Realm continued to rise as the Bardings trespassed into the lands of the Elves. Dofer and company participated in the hunting of the White Stag. They're invited by King Thranduil to hunt the magical white stag. If you catch him, he gives you wishes, that sort of thing. But instead, they find a black hart accompanied by a milky white, H-A-R-T, a black hart accompanied by a milky white doe and fawn. Birdsong drew her bow, shot, and killed the black hart, bringing a curse of ill luck upon themselves. Later on, they found Ruthiel. Ruthiel is the captain of King Thranduil's guard, and she was captured by Polmin and Polin, two Greydale dwarves who were hoping to sort of hold her hostage to get King Thranduil's help reclaiming the Greydelf, which is not a super well considered plan. Not that it matters, because as soon as the party met them, negotiations went sour. The party brandished weapons, which caused the two very touchy dwarves to attack, and the party killed them in the process, nearly sparking a feud with the Greydale dwarves. And in this year, we have a couple of important things come up. One is the River Maidens. The River Maidens are three Well, they're three river maidens. I don't really know what else to call them. But if you think sort of along the lines of Goldberry or maybe her mother, maybe a little less sinister than her mother, you won't be far from the truth. There are these three spirits, these three women, river maidens, again, I don't really know what to call them, who inhabit the Dusky River, which is the river that flows down into the Black Tarn. And then also the Great Elf Dwarves, who are going to come up and be pretty important in the campaign later on. In the year 2950, scouts from Thranduil returned from the mountains of Mirkwood and reported that evil things are stirring in the dark. The strength of the orcs at Fenbridge Castle. Fenbridge Castle is the main outpost of Dol Guldur. The strength of the orcs at Fenbridge Castle grow. Settlements along the Black Tarn and the East Bight are attacked by orcs, and the woodmen fought them off and continued to hunt for the bloody ghost. Again, it's a clip. Some mutter darkly about Mogdred's men and blamed them for the evil. And a few of the wayward elves at a feast at the Bower decide to punish the Bardings for their trespassing. Wayward elves, that's another faction to keep track of, I suppose. The wayward elves are basically elves who believe that mortals don't really have any place in the affairs of elves or in Mirkwood, and they're more xenophobic, more isolationist. It's a small but growing faction within the elves of Mirkwood. So they, when next a group of foresters entered the woods, the elves harassed and ensorcelled them, weaving spells about the mortals. The foresters lose their way and wander into the depths of the forest. Three are met by friendlier elves and guided back to the elf path, but another goes mad and dies. Receiving word from Radagast the Brown that he is in need of their help, the party traveled from Laketown to Rosgable, and they decided, looking at the map of Mirkwood, to travel via the Old Dwarf Road to save time. Now, the thing to understand about the Old Dwarf Road is that at this point in time, it's pretty much unusable. You'll recall from The Hobbit that we're basically told that if Thor and company had attempted to use the Old Dwarf Road, they never would have made it to the other side. It's overgrown, but it's also passes through the worst part of Mirkwood, I guess, or the second worst part of Mirkwood. And at this point in time, it's not used by anyone. Anyone who wants to pass through Mirkwood has to use the elf path. Well, the party, sort of knowing this, decided to risk the Old Dwarf Road to save time anyway. And as a result, they were ambushed by a large number of goblins and some kind of a huge worm creature. Not quite a dragon, but something of that type. And all save Lumerin were slain. So Dofur Doin's son made a wall of bodies around him as he tried to hold the goblins off long enough for his friends to escape. Birdsong and Albert the Beorning were slain by the Great Worm, and pretty basically just Lumerin escaped. Lumerin is an elf of the wood, and she escaped to wander for months, actually, through the madness and enchantment of the mountains of Mirkwood before she finally made her way home, nearly overcome by the dangers and the troubles of the road, not to mention the heaviness of spirit which lay upon her for the death of her friends. And this was sort of the end of the run of bad luck, which seems to have begun with the slaying of the Black Heart. One thing of note is that Alberic, who had previously made a deal with an elf woman to bless his spirit when he was going after the troll Mansbane, was given the choice in his death, as his spirit found its way to the edges of the Anduin, to journey with her as she was now going over the sea to the west, or to return and guard the mound of his companions. And he chose the latter, returned, took up his fallen comrades, laid them in a mound, and men say that that part of the Old Dwarf Road is now haunted by a spirit in bare form who will not let any evil thing pass that way. So in the year 2951, evil spirits re-entered Dol Guldur to reclaim the fortress for their master. Malevolent creatures return to the forest to pledge their allegiance, and as new threats rise to menace both the woodmen and the Sylvan elves, while the ruined stronghold of southern Mirkwood is restored to its former strength. Sauron unveiled his presence in Mordor once again. And in the meantime, our players, Sophie, who had been playing Birdsong, took up Asfred. So Asfred, who was an NPC, is now a player character. And she's accompanied by a hobbit named Foxglove and a dwarf of the Lonely Mountain by the name of Narvi, who's played by Jonathan, who was playing Albert before. Ben is playing Foxglove now. And of course, Lumarin is continuing on. They carry the Helm of Peace from Dale to Sunstead. Essentially, the settlement of Sunstead, which was founded by Ceolwina the Generous. It's the woodman settlement that is in the East Bight. The settlement of Sunstead had been plagued by woodwights, essentially evil spirits out of the wood, who had been buried in the great howls, the great barrows of the Easterling, not the Easterlings, the great barrows of the old kingdom of Rovanian along the East Bight. They had been plaguing the men of Sunstead, and the men of Sunstead believed that perhaps they had done something to anger or violate the sanctity of their ancestors, and so Lord Ceolwina had a helmet called the Helm of Peace, item of great worth, forged by the dwarves of the Lonely Mountains and set with many costly jewels, had it brought to him by the players, and they brought him the Helm of Peace and aided him in placing the helm in a barrow. In the process, they had to slay a woodwight, or at least destroy a woodwight, who attempted to take control of Lord Ceolwina, essentially. But once they did that and laid the helm in the barrow, it seemed to appease the unquiet spirits of the woodmen's ancestors. In the year 2952, fishing in the Black Tarn was especially poor, as something seemed to be going wrong with the Tarn. A man named Vigland the Cruel, who some people say was an actual relative of Beorn and a shape changer himself, a man, but also a slaver and not a very nice guy, attempted to seize the forest gate and clashed with the Beornings. The Viglandings were initially victorious, but rumors of a large bear moving through the forest scatter Vigland's men. Our party, in the meantime, begins scouting, accompanying a dwarf who is keen on reclaiming the Old Dwarf Road. I can't even remember his name now because he died so quickly. But anyway, accompanying a dwarf who was very keen on reclaiming the Old Dwarf Road. The party scouted along it and actually reclaimed the Staff of the Road Warden, this ancient dwarven artifact, which belongs to this ancient dwarven office of Road Warden, the person basically in charge of overseeing the Men in Algrim, the dwarven road, and keeping it safe. They find the Staff of the Road Warden, and in the process they manage to, Narvi the dwarf manages to wound Taller the Hunter. Taller the Hunter is one of the three great children of Shelob, and a very tough spider. Narvi manages to wound him and drive him off, and in the process claims for himself, taking up the Staff of the Road Warden, claims for himself the title of a Road Warden. The winter is the worst in recent memory, and the Black Tarn is hit especially hard. In the year 2953, the Black Tarn darkened and became choked with weeds. Woodmen began to disappear, and boats began to vanish, and it becomes dangerous to stray too close to the water's edge. In the meantime, skirmishes continue between the Beornings and the Viglandings. Saruman the White withdrew into Isengard for the final time, and the last meeting of the White Council was held. The werewolf of Mirkwood attacked the elves as they feasted in a clearing in northern Mirkwood, and although the beast was slain, it was feared that the threat was not truly ended. The party actually, after a fight with the werewolf, tracked it into the mountains of Mirkwood and found its lair, where they also found 7 children of the woodmen lying under a deep and magical sleep. At least one of those children was Elise, the small red-headed baby girl that they had rescued from the Mirror Maiden some years earlier. Or at least Lumarin had. The rest of the party wasn't around yet. They also smashed the remnants of they also found, the smashed remnants of an elven lamp. They weren't quite sure what to do with those, but they did rescue those children, and those children did seem to be healed in time, but the threat of the werewolf was not ended. Well, that takes us as far as 2953. I think I'm going to stop this video right there, and in the next one, I'll start up in the year 2954, when we have one of the party's more memorable encounters with another one of the children of Shelob, Julkin the Weaver.